I thank everyone for, let me introduce myself for those of you who don't know me. I'm Becky McGee-Langford. I'm the acting state archivist, but in my normal day job, I'm head of government records. So thank you guys for taking the time out of your Saturday to come and listen to our staff give some presentations on the commemoration of the America 250 creation of the armed forces. We have a variety of really good collections that illustrate the diverse history of service in North Carolina, military service in North Carolina. And I just am excited to hear what staff have to discuss. Also, if you guys have not had an opportunity, we've been commemorating the creation of the armed forces throughout 2025. So there are any number of blog posts that that talk specifically about the armed forces through time. And so I encourage you to go back and take a look at those if you haven't done so already. I want to thank our speakers ahead of time, and I also want to talk a little bit about logistics. There are restrooms in the lobby on either side of the lobby. The women's is over here, the men's is over here. We will be having refreshments out on this side when we have our breaks. And please take a moment to look at the posters that are outside as well, because those are actually from our collection, every single one of them. And we did reproductions, so you guys could get a kind of a hint as to the diversity of that collection. And that collection is actually in our digital collection online, so you may want to take a look at that as well. I think right now I'm going to turn it over to the president of the Friends, George, if you want to come up and do some opening remarks. And I also, while he's coming up, I want to thank the Friends for all the work they've done this year and in past years to assist the state archives in our mission and our operations. I think we're going to hear a few of those things that they've done in the past year through the report this year, but I wanted to personally thank the Friends Board for all of that support this year and in prior years as well. Yeah, thank you. Give them a round of applause, because that without their assistance in certain areas, we would not be able to do those things. And I will give kudos out to the internships this year. I think both of the interns were thoroughly excited about the internships and what they learned during their time with us.
Absolutely.
So I feel like that was a great resource.
And mostly, thank you to you and the staff who really make history real.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's all, you know, people can come down and find things, but it's through their help and through the resources here
Mm-hmm.
that it does so much.
Yep. So thank you. And if you don't have an agenda, we can get you one too, because it'll tell you when the breaks are coming. And so I'll turn it over to George now. Thank you, guys.
One thing.
Sure.
How do I advance the slide? Oh, there is? All right.
Right here.
Got it.
This right here?
I'm
Okay.
good.
Thank you. You're good.
There's also a laser pointer.
Oh, okay. All right. So what we're going to do here, we're going to advance forward. And, you know, the biggest thing here is to realize that we are the Friends of Archives. We are not archives, you know, but we actually act separately to raise funding and to support things that, you know, maybe the state cannot allow to be paid for out of the state funds. So we provide that need, and we really depend on the support of good people and those people that are interested in history and that use records, and we do a lot of good on leveraging from that effort. So a lot of slides. This is really cool. This is from Billy Austin, just an 8th grader from like during the Revolutionary War posters, and it's amazing. When was working up here one time just on my own stuff. There's a lady that she's going through the 1929 4-H, I think it was, collection. And she's just going through reading what the kids from different counties were going through. There's so much here. And the report by Becky, you just heard that. And then, David, come on up, please.
I don't think I can get out of this chair. I tried to eat me a few minutes ago. All right. We're gonna make this quick. Hi, I'm David Serksner. I'm the treasurer. Yay. We have, oh, wait, okay. You have the clicker?
Yes.
Thank you. Can I use it?
Yes, sure.
Thank you. Because you don't need it. Although I like that. Those are really cool. We have so much neat stuff here. All right, our balance sheet. We have the PNC checking account, and then we have, does this have a cat toy on it? Okay, so we have the cat. So we have the PNC checking account, that is the balance in the checking account. And then we have 4 endowments through the North Carolina Community Foundation that we use for paying interns, that if we have a staff member who wants to do a conference, we can pay it out of that. What we basically do is we write the check and then we pay ourselves back out of the endowment accounts. This is money that folks have given us, left us, willed us, bequeathed us. We do have planned giving, so we do all that through the Community Foundation. They're good people, by the way. I like working with them. The major things that we help support is preservation and the interns, which is both really exciting things. And then our total endowment is down. Oh, whoops. Okay, I hit the wrong button. The total endowment monies are right in there at the bottom line, but this is our checking account balance. Very healthy, and of course, most of our money comes through donations, comes through memberships, so we rely on you all. And does anybody have any questions? Because this is my big excitement right there. No? All right, that means I've done everything right here. Thanks.
All right, and most important, this year last year we had a zero balance budget. Everything came out nicely, but this year we went over, and that was planned. It's during COVID, and in years past we really were not spending, and as an organization like ours, we are required to do that, and so we took this year to really, number one, we bought new computers, software to do business. We were using 2013 computers, and that's not good. And so we've made some changes there, and but we've also spent some money exploring ways to reach different audiences and to build membership. And so and we doubled up the amount of internships, which is wonderful. And so we had a good, healthy year of spending. But now with the new director coming in at some point, we hope to get some guidance on where to go from that point. Becky, was there did you have something to add on that, or? Would you please come forward? Thank you.
That's my problem for not taking notes down when I'm having to talk.
While we're transitioning, I just heard from the people on the live stream. They'd ask if you could just speak into the mic. It's a little bit low on the live stream.
Okay, so just into the mic. So that was one thing I wanted to mention, and it dropped out of my mind. We will have a state archivist starting at the beginning of December, so the hiring process is almost finished. We're just doing the onboarding work to get her on board, and I think I'm free to say her name at this point. Her name is Kelly Policelli, and she has worked for the state archives on and off through her career. So she is very familiar with the operations of that we have. She did most of her work was over actually in government records, dealing with public records, and also in electronic records management. So she is coming to us from Elon College, Special Collections, University Archives setting. So she has a good round of experience both in government records work as well as special collections work. So we're looking forward to her getting here, getting on board, getting up to speed. So in December, I talked with her last week. In December, we're hoping to have a meet and greet for the board and staff. So just keep an eye out, and we'll be sending out an invitation for that coming up. So I'm really excited for her to get here. So, and I think everybody on staff is as well, and I know you guys are. So just got that out now, so we'll give it back to George.
Thank you. And we look forward to that, and hopefully we'll be able to set up a meeting with the board to get to meet the new director. Let's see. All right. Before we move forward, there's one other person I just want to thank, and Sarah Kuntz. We really haven't had a chance at an annual meeting, to just to mention all that you've done through the years, and thank you so much for everything, and absolutely. And I understand that there's an article, so you'll need to look for that in this month's issue or the issue of, is it Our State magazine? All right, so take a look for that, and that's Sarah Kuntz, and hopefully you're enjoying the new shoes and being able to walk the walk of a retired person. So stay healthy and enjoy. My name is George Thomas, and I remember my first day at Archives, 1995. I remember it just as clear as a bell. My father had just passed, and I went down, and first thing I had to do was get one of these. It's a little white card, and in that card, it's your ticket to get behind the desk to where all the good stuff is. That, and I noticed that everybody had bags of quarters, okay? And those quarters, the machines back in the back, they were waiting in line to do microfilm, and that was important. Whoops. There's a lot of that sound, too, and change on the floor. There was also people at the desk. Some people had green banker's caps so that the light wouldn't glare as they read the old letters and books, from antiquity. So that's where I got my start, and it was a wonderful time, but I've grown and learned so much since that time, but so has Archives, and it's changed. We were damaging papers, damaging books, and so now a lot of it is online, but when you do these major transitions like that, there's little things that go missing, so, and not record-wise. A little bit about Archives. Using donations and endowments, and this is from our front page. Using donations and endowments, the Friends of Archives purchases collections, funds conservation work, and implements public programming. We also sponsor staff education and professional development. And that's a lot that we add to the mission of Archives. Okay, so with that in mind, since the role of Archives is to raise awareness and funding for programming and for everything that Archives does, it's vitally important that that we look at Since the role of archives is to raise awareness and funding for these much-needed activities, the who and how of messaging is vitally important. Okay, and so this year the board has observed basically 4 things, and that one, there's many people like myself who are up in age. You know, we've had our fun and we still love archives and all that it does. But we're looking for places to park our gifts and our money. And so archives does so much, and if Friends of Archives is an organization to raise funding for the state archives, then it's important that such people know that they could be a friend and that archives could use their love. Okay, so there's that message, that's number one. There's also another group of people that we need to really look at, and would be the newbies, the young folks, those that are in education, studying to be historians or in that field. And a lot of these people now, they see everything online and through different forms, and they don't realize that the real stuff is here, and this is where it's at. And that's just sort of goes over their heads. And so we need to connect with that audience. We need to let young people know and new people starting out that, yes, Ancestry or Family Search is a wonderful resource, but those records are housed here, and the volume of records is much deeper than what you would see, what you would think. Okay, so, and third, we need to collaborate and we need to leverage. We need to work with groups like North Carolina Genealogical Society, and we have in the past. And we need to work with Wake County Genealogical Society. We also need to work with historical societies and historic groups and anybody related to history, because it's not intuitive to reach out from state archives through the small organization when there's so many other people that can help us to get that message out, that just a little bit of giving, that your membership means a lot as far as building resources. And then lastly, and this is back to messaging, is we need to integrate all of that into the message of records. When a staff member goes out to give a presentation, and if it's funded by Friends of Archives, that needs to be stated, it needs to be stated, and then say, hey, if you want to help build these sorts of resources, then it would be wonderful if you gave in support of Friends of Archives. So there's that. And then lastly, on my message is state archives makes history real, and it really does. And for this, I go back to this summer. My wife and I went to a trivia night held by archives at a local downtown. I think it was the Raleigh Times. And there's a large group of people in there just having a wonderful time. And one of the questions was about the TV series Outlander. Okay, and at the end of this question, Josh Hager, who was the MC at the time, basically said, we talked, and we don't know exactly what he said, but it was something to the fact of Outlander would not be what it is without the stuff in archives. It would be made up. It would be something else. And so there's so much stuff written about stuff, and it's all founded in the records here. And so that, for me, that struck home that that's what we're about. If we can get that message out and integrate that in so that the people that come here and use archives and use the resources through other means can learn that message, that we make history real, that archives makes that real, that the staff working to make that message real. So that's all very, very important. So if you're interested in giving or joining. If you are a member, we thank you sincerely. And please think about giving if you're a member. But then if you're not a member, you can find us at friendsofarchivesnc.org. That's FOANC.org. And there's ways to join at that address. So at this point, let's move forward. And, well, there's that. We did have a good year this year. We had, this is a list of the volunteers, and these are people that are just interested in history and doing this kind of thing, and so they come in and learn. And so from government records to audio-visual reference, all these people have come in to help copy, digitize, and do things sort of, I call it behind the yellow, it's like Land of Oz, behind the yellow curtain. And next, we also had two interns that the Friends paid for, funded. And one is Allison Schaefer, and she studied at North Bennett Street School, and as a matter of fact, when I was a director of the Craft Center at NC State, one of my students went to North Bennett Street School as a woodworker, and now he's like the #1 tour guide in Boston, you know. So it's really cool to see people from different avenues coming in and what an experience like this not only does for them, but the benefit to archives. Clara Booker, there's lots of different collections that you normally wouldn't think of, and this is an education collection from, you know, back in the 70s, and so that was finally, you know, put together and processed and everything, and so that's one more collection added to the stacks. So. The Friends of Archives also support the National History Day. We had, there were 2 winners this year that were chosen. Luke Bradsher from Person County won the high school level for a website, and then a group from Pine Springs and Holly Springs won for their presentation on freedom of religion. We also support events, and this year we were at the Family History Day. We funded both the refreshments and the speakers, so all the speakers were provided for by Friends of Archives, and Renee Sanders, Desi Campbell, and Joyce Cole were the speakers for this year. A wonderful event. And we also went out to Historic Turner House and had a day there. And even Historic Turner House in Raleigh, you know, it's a house, but it has a strong history going back through times of slavery, and the house is a house. But through the records at archives, and then in those records are records from Wake County and other records, the story can be better told. And so archives, what's here makes history real. For staff, we had a training event on the Coharie River, so the workers paddled and they learned from a indigenous Native American about the area, about the history, and while they were learning other things, I'm not sure what all that entailed, but that was a training day. And you know, then again, here's the I don't think this is actually a Historic Turner House, but
That was the Friends of Overland Village annual celebration.
right. Thank you, Cheryl. Okay, as far as board members, this year, at this point in time, my name is George Thomas, President. David McCorkle is vice president. He's also president of North Carolina Genealogical Society. Becky McGee Langford. Let's see. And this is all a little bit, right now we are very much in a transition. Becky McGee Langford is secretary, and we just spoke from her, and then David Serksner is treasurer. As far as other members, we have Darren Waters, ex officio, D. Reed Wilson, and Troy Kickler is past president. And members at large from the staff are Joshua Hager and Danielle Shrilla. The terming, and then these are the terms that are ending now and then later. And as far as new members, I just want to take a minute to welcome. We've got Ed Morris is joined the board this year recently, and back when I was putting the quarters on the counter at Archives in the 90s, he managed the search desk and lots of other things. He goes back from the 70s through the mid-90s. And so he also was instrumental with the Wake Forest Museum, and with that organization, retired and working full time. Okay. Also is Amy Bradsher from Person County, and she's been an intern from years past, and then she's also, I think, a school teacher and involved in programming type things, and at a state historical site in that location. So welcome, and we hope to do lots of good things next year. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Josh Hager. He was the MC that day at Raleigh Times. And
thank you, George.
yes, sir.
So we will start in a little bit with our programming for the commemoration of the America 250th anniversary of the Armed Forces. But before we get into that, it is time for our short break. So if you wouldn't mind, we have refreshments outside. We will reconvene promptly at 9:45 for our first presentation for our litany of speakers. Thank you so much. All right, we're going to start reconvening here. At the request of our former state archivist, I will do my best awful military joke. What did General Patton tell his troops after a hard-won victory? Tanks a lot. Yeah, so there you go, the awful military joke. That's out of the way. We now may proceed. We've got an incredible slate of speakers going across time periods, communities, and topics today. Later on, you'll be hearing from two of my colleagues, Allison Thurman and Ashley Latta-Post. But I am honored to start the day with our keynote presentation from Commander Gabriel Carr. She is the commander of the Charles T. Norwood branch of the American Legion Post number 157, the first African-American post in Wake County. And also assisting her with this presentation, she'll be giving it, but I'd like to give a hat tip to David Serkster as well, who assisted with some of the research. Commander Carr, the floor is yours. Thank you so much for joining us today. And you can use this clicker to move
Okay,
them. And just,
so
if
left,
you-
right is click.
Yes, and this is the red button should be somewhere. It should be laser pointer if it works.
Okay.
And just stay close to the mic. Thank
All
you
right,
so
cool.
much, Commander.
Y'all, so I'm a millennial, so we gotta take a selfie real quick. Thanks, y'all. Okay. Thank you all for inviting us here today. As he stated, I am Gabriel Carr, the post commander of the American Legion, Charles T. Norwood Post 157 here in Raleigh, North Carolina. And today with me, we have our post historian. He's taking pictures. Hey! And our past post commander, James Langston, and his wife. Thank you all for being here. Thank everyone for being here. So 250 years celebrating the armed forces. Yes, I was in the armed forces. That's how you have to get in this veterans organization. I served for 21 years in the military. I started off at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. That's where I did my basic training. That took me to Germany, then Fort Campbell. I got off active duty from Fort Campbell, and I moved back home to North Carolina. I was a single mom, and just staying on active duty just didn't make sense for me. But I knew that it didn't seem like I was finished with the military yet. So I moved back to North Carolina, and I started getting these phone calls about the National Guard. And I was like, what the heck is the National Guard? So I just knew it was an opportunity to continue serving. So I joined the National Guard, and I ended up retiring from the National Guard as an AGR soldier. So I was essentially active duty on National Guard. So that's how I spent my 21 years in the military. So Germany, 2 deployments to Iraq, and my last one was to Afghanistan. So I really enjoyed my time in the military. Currently, I am the fixed asset coordinator for the Department of Disability Determination Services. That's the government agency that approves Social Security benefits. So it's like I'm the supply sergeant of that agency. So I'm just still doing what I love to do. I'm also a mother. I'm a new grandmother. That's cool. I have a 5-month-old granddaughter, so that's pretty cool. I think I'm kind of young, but I think I'm doing a good job. So I like having her. My daughter's already getting her village together, so I have her a lot. So my daughter thinks my telework day on Wednesday means I have a day off, so she brings the baby over, but it's okay. I like hanging out with her. I have been in this American Legion post for 14 years. Not long after joining, I did become the adjutant of the post. The adjutant takes care of administrative duties, if you will, and just kind of helps keep things moving along. As far as the post, we will be celebrating, as you see, 101 years of service this year, our Founders Day celebration. We're looking forward to that next month. It'll be December 20th. Each year we have a celebration just to commemorate, what we've done throughout the year. Let's see here. Oh, this year, this is pretty cool. We're also gonna be in the Raleigh Christmas parade. I don't know if we used to do that. It's the first time we've done it since I've been there, so we're looking to have a good time at the Raleigh Christmas Parade. Okay. The American Legion is a military veterans organization that was founded in 1919 by American Expeditionary Forces and veterans in Paris Paris as an organization, to advocate for veterans and serve communities. The 4 pillars of the American Legion are national security, veterans affairs and rehabilitation, Americanism, and children and youth. Key achievements include lobbying for the creation of the VA, which is the Veteran Administration, creating the first GI Bill in 1944, and establishing youth programs like Boys State. Today, the American Legion continues to advocate for veterans' benefits and serve communities nationwide through its thousands of local posts, just like Post 157. And before I continue with this brief, I would like to thank David Serksner. He is the one that did all of this work. I thought I knew a lot about our post, but thanks to this building and upstairs, those boxes you all have up there are a lot of documents in those boxes that I was not aware of. I didn't know this building existed. I didn't know this organization existed, but we're grateful for you, sir, for doing the work and digging in those boxes and finding all of these documents, and it's because of him I am up here. So thank you, sir. Okay. All right, here is a brief history of some of these things I already mentioned, and you will hear some redundancy throughout the presentation. So, brief history of the American Legion. March 1919, the first American Legion caucus was held by those American Expeditionary Forces that I mentioned earlier in Paris. In July 1919, Raleigh American Legion Post number 1 was formed. Remember that. American Legion Post 1 in Raleigh was formed. In September 1919, the American Legion was chartered in Congress. In November 1919, the first National Convention was held in Minneapolis. And in September 1920, the poppy was adopted as the official flower of the American Legion. November 1921, dedication of the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier was in Washington, D.C. And in March 1924, the American Legion uniform caps are introduced. And on 19 December 1924, the Charles T. Norwood American Legion Post number 157 was chartered. In June 1925, the permanent charter for the national headquarters opens in Indianapolis, Indiana. And in December 1938, Post 157 receives its permanent charter. So in the American Legion, you have a temporary charter, and then some time passes, and you apply for your permanent charter. So, our namesake, Charles T. Norwood. Oh, what happened? Our namesake of our post is Charles T. Norwood, and he was born in Raleigh on the 28th of April, 1895. His parents are Charles T. Sr. and Emmeline Dunn Norwood. The T, which I never knew, thanks to David, I now know stands for Turner. He was inducted into the Army on April 27, 1918, and was severely wounded 11 November 1918, just hours before the war was supposed to be ending. He died from his wounds on January 17, 1919. And he was initially buried in France, but then his body was eventually transported back here to Raleigh, and he is buried in the Raleigh National Cemetery. So on Memorial Day, we go over there and we place a wreath on his grave marker. And although the post has been active for all these years, we have not been able to find a picture of Charles T. Norwood. So maybe one day we will, maybe we won't, but that is who our post is named after, Charles T. Norwood. He's said to have been the first African-American in Raleigh to pass away in the war, correct? Yes. And this is gonna be some cool visuals about the Norwood family in the U.S. Census. Can you all see that? Okay, you can see that pretty good. All right, the Norwood family in the 1900s, 1910, and the 1920 census. In the 1900 census, the family lives in the Neuse River Township. 1910, they have moved to the House Creek Township. In 1920, in the 1920 census, the family is in Raleigh on East Lane Street. And Evelyn is listed as the head of the household in the 1920, 30, and 40 census. We don't know where Charles is, but he does die in 1944, and Charles and Evelyn are both buried together at the Mount Pleasant Baptist Church Cemetery in the northern part of Raleigh. This is Charles T. Norwood's registration card and the ship's manifest shipping from Hoboken, and his mother, Evelyn, is listed as the point of contact. This is pretty cool. So coverage of Charles T. Norwood in the News and Observer. Norwood was the only African American from Wake County to die during the Great War. And these are news articles. The president earlier stated, make history real. And these documents actually make history real. This building, those boxes, you all make history real. I'm amazed as we keep going through the slides that the history, this really, and as he told me what the theme was, makes history real this morning, I said, yeah, this really is real. We can't forget, where we come from, you all. Okay. When a soldier died overseas, they were buried in an area cemetery. Paperwork was sent to the family asking if they wanted the body returned and where it was to be sent. In this case, the body was sent to Leitner's funeral home. Note that the sheets are the same ones used as for the returning personnel. This is sheet 98 of the manifest. And that Charles T. Norwood body is number 3886. That's him, 3886, right there. The American cemetery where Charles T. Norwood was initially interred is in Septis-Pole, France. So that's a cool image of that cemetery. Now he's buried at the Raleigh National Cemetery. And Charles T. Norwood was one of 3 brothers, all of whom fought in the Great War, and all of whom are buried in the Raleigh National Cemetery. Post 157, did y'all know that he had 2 other brothers? I did not know that. So here they are, all buried at the Raleigh National Cemetery. Excuse me, I have some more notes. Okay, so now we get to post 157 being stood up. At the time of the organization and the charter of our post, veteran service organizations were segregated by race, as was American society. The charter members of the Charles T. Norwood American Legion Post 157, they were veterans of World War I. The application for the post was first made in December 1924, and the permanent charter was issued in December 1938. The names on the first form include Dr. J. Thomas Hamlin, pharmacist at Hamlin Drugs, Lawrence A. Oxley, director of divisions of works among Negroes for the state, and a member of FDR's Black Cabinet. Dr. Harold Trigg, superintendent of the Negro high schools of the Department of Education, and the first Black president of St. Augustine's College. Another early member was Fred J. Carnage, the prominent Raleigh lawyer, among others. Members of the Charles T. Norwood Post 157 served as state commanders for the Division B, the Negro Division of the American Legion, until it was dissolved. And I have some more names of those charter members. So I mentioned Dr. J. Thomas Hamlin, Lawrence Oxley, there's Mr. James E. Strickland, there's Dr. Harold Trigg, Dr. Rufus Vass was a physician, Mr. Frank Watson was a postal carrier, Mr. Claude E. Whitaker was a newspaper editor, Mr. Charles G. Williams was a community leader, there was a Mr. J.B. Hyde and a Mr. R.B. Jefferson. And last but not least, there was a gentleman named Mr. Jerome J. Turner. He was a businessman. And this morning, I met his granddaughter, and she's right here today. So you see how history makes things real? So I was happy to see her at the Oberlin celebration a couple of months ago. And now I'm gonna invite you to Founders Day, girl, so come on and hang out with us. Okay, so the first time the Charles T. Norwood Post is listed in the city directory is in 1933, and their home is in the back of the Royal Movie Theater. The Royal Movie Theater was a part of what was called the Black Main Street, East Hargett Street. It's now a parking lot. So when this picture was taken, it was a movie was being advertised, The Clutching Hand. And because David is such a great archivist, he found a movie poster for The Clutching Hand. Okay. So this is let me go back. So David also made me aware of like a phone book. Back in the day, they used to have a directory of a city directory. So like the phone book, yeah, the directory of businesses and addresses, they had a book as well. And this document shows, this is not the directory, but this document shows that the American Legion Post 157 was had their meetings on the 1st and the 3rd. At Friday at 8 p.m. at 119 and a half, that's interesting, East Hargett Street. And the American Legion Raleigh Post number 1, they met the second Thursday of each month at 8 p.m. at Hotel Carolina. So remember Post 1, I said remember that earlier. So from what I understand about the American Legion, posts receive their numbers based on when they apply for a charter. So Post 1 here in Raleigh, North Carolina, was the first post in North Carolina to apply for its American Legion charter. So we being 157, we were the 157. That seems odd, but to my understanding, that's how it is. So when 157 came about, although Post 1 was here, right in the same county and city, the members of our post, who also served the members of Post number 1, they could not join the same American Legion post. So that's why you have Post 157 here today. And although it was not the best of times in society, the charter members of our post, I think they made the best of that time, and they stood this post up to support the military veterans in this community. And historically, South is Hargett, Southeast, this is Southeast. Yeah, so historically, this is our side of town. So they really did do the best they could, for this community. And we're very grateful for those men. They could have, went home and tucked their tails, but they got in a fight just like everybody else. And this pink picture is the city directory. And it does state 119 and a half, the American Legion Post 157. and you probably can't see it. Well, maybe you can, but in parentheses, there's a C, and C means colored. And this is a map from the 1909 Sanborn map. The numbering is a bit messed up, but this is what we have. And David did express to me that before the 1930s, the post was started in 1924, but from 1924 to the 1930s, there is no record of where the post home was or where they met. So I'm just assuming they probably used that address of one of the members' homes. More maps. Recruitment and membership. So this document is a document that David found, and it's an early recruitment effort by the Post. The opening, what does it say? It says, note the opening beginning with the Negro National Anthem. The poem was written in 1900 by James Weldon Johnson and set to music by his brother, J. Rosamond Johnson. It was adopted as the Negro National Anthem by NAACP in 1919. The closing hymn, the Battle Hymn of the Republic, was written by Julia Ward in 1861. So when I was talking to David on Wednesday, when he brought this slide up, it kind of brought it home to me. Oftentimes at our current events, our guys want to include the Negro National Anthem. And I'm like, why y'all want to include the Negro National Anthem? Like, it's a different time. Like, let's move forward. But when I saw this, it just made it more real to me that we can't forget about the small things. That song is a big part of our history. So now, when I make our Memorial Day program, I proudly type that song in there as a song we sing and we're gonna keep singing. So thank you, David, for including this image in the presentation. Went too fast. Much of the correspondence in the North Carolina American Legion collection in the North Carolina archives deals with membership. On the left is a membership list from 1939, and on the right is a letter from the Post to the treasurer of the North Carolina American Legion enclosing a membership check. You good, historian? Okay. In November 1942, the Post purchased a property at 416 East Cabarrus Street from Wake County. They did not move into the site until 1951. The property was a rental from about 1911 until the Post moved in 1951. This is the 1950 Sanborn map with an overlay showing that the Post was in the house. Notice how long the lot is along East Street. The next door neighbor at 414 East Cabarrus Street was Benjamin Rogers, who owned a candy store located on the ground floor of the Prince Hall Masonic Lodge, located at the corner of South Blunt and East Street. Another directory. So this is another city directory. In 1994, the city of Raleigh purchased a property at 416 East Cabarrus Street, along with the property next door. The houses were torn down in 2003. Okay, so vulnerable moment real quick, y'all. So, like I said, I've been a member of our Post for 14 years. I've always known that the address of our former Post home was this Cabarrus Street address. And because I had never saw it, I would always think about just downtown buildings, and I just created this image in my mind. So I said, oh, it must have been one of those tall, white brick buildings with a basement, and they probably used to go downstairs and party and all that stuff. When this picture came up right here on Wednesday night, I just started crying. And even later on that night, I sent that text to my executive committee, like, y'all, I saw the post home. Oh my gosh, I just started crying. And it's still emotional now, but I just didn't realize it was a residential home. So I imagine just all the business that took place in that location. They made do with what they had. That's a great structure. And even now that we haven't had a post home for many years, we're still making do. We're still doing great work for our community, for the children and youth, and for veterans and those still serving on active duty. So just seeing that picture, I don't know why it touched me so much, but seeing that picture made history real. And thank you for finding that picture for us, David. The American Legion was from its beginnings a segregated organization across the country, and this does not change until the 1960s. And as you can see, those are some of the articles. The topic of the American Legion and segregation is discussed by Oliver Burton in this book from Routledge, War Veterans and the World After 1945. On July 26, 1948, President Harry S. Truman signed Executive Order 9981. And what would you guess? There was an opposition to this order. Executive Order 9981 was abolishing segregation in the armed forces, mandating equality of treatment and opportunity for all personnel, regardless of race, color, religion, or national origin. And those are just some articles referencing that. Yep. Now on to some happy stuff. The Charles T. Norwood Drum and Bugle Corps. Now, this is a picture that I am familiar with, and I've seen this picture as long as I've been a member of the Post. And David also enlightened me that the Post home is behind those gentlemen standing there. So I've seen the picture, I just never knew that that was the Post home. So that was really cool and archivisty of this whole thing. The Charles T. Norwood Post, like many American Legion posts, had a drum and bugle corps. This is an undated photo of the Post drum and bugle corps in front of the house on East Cabarrus Street. You can see the numbers on the front porch. This is also one of the few pictures we have of the house on East Cabarrus Street. The Drum and Bugle Corps won a $100 prize from the American Legion. There was a letter in the archives asking about the check and when it would be sent to the Post. See, those archives, y'all, geez Louise, they make, we gotta get that money. Okay. The Drum and Bugle Corps was featured in parades in Raleigh, including the parade held for the 1950 premiere of the movie Bright Leaf. about the tobacco grown here in North Carolina and the rivalry between two tobacco tycoons. The premiere was held at the Ambassador Theater on Fayetteville Street. The irony, of course, is that the Ambassador Theater was segregated. And I had some notes in my history about the Post as well. It said the Drum and Bugle Corps participated in all kinds of events all throughout the country. They participated in the American Legion's National Convention in New York City, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Cleveland, Ohio, and many other state conventions. They also participated in homecoming Christmas parades, Armistice Day celebrations, which is Veterans Day and Memorial Day programs. So yes, they were pretty active. And now on to some current visuals. After selling the East Cabarrus Street property in 1994, the Charles T. Norwood Post moved around a bit. We now meet off of Maywood Avenue in Raleigh, and here are some photos and flyers for recent events, including our 100th anniversary celebration. Now, when David got to this slide, you all, on Wednesday, I was like, wait, where'd you get these photos from? So he had to go to centennial.legion.org. Our historian back there that's taking pictures, all the pictures he takes, he ends up uploading them on the American Legion Centennial website. So that picture on the, what is that to y'all? On the left, that's me getting installed as the post commander this past June. Those are the other post officers in the middle. They're also doing the installation ceremony. And this picture on the, that's my left. That was just a couple of months ago where I installed my first new member. So, David, you're really good at your job. You really do some digging, sir. So those are a couple of the pictures from recently at our post. And that flyer is the flyer that was created last year for our 100-year celebration. And this program is the Memorial Day program that we had this year at Carolina Biblical Gardens. How am I doing with time, you all? Oh, okay. So here are some thank yous. Thank you to Commander James and Geneva Langston, past commander of Charles T. Norwood Post 157. They're here today. Thank you to me, the staff at the search room at the State Archives of North Carolina, George Thomas, and the Board of Friends of the Archives, Miss Octavia Rainey, Miss Carmen Cthulhu, and Miss Gregory Tyler. And just real quick, I know I'm over my time, but history makes things real. Yes, and I just wanted to mention that history is still happening in Charles T. Norwood Post 157. If you all are familiar with the 6888, that's the Women's Army Corps. The 6888 was the postal battalion that went over to France to help them with the backlog of mail. Well, one of the members of that unit was in our post. Her name was Millie Dunn Veazey, and I had the pleasure of knowing her for many years. She passed away in 2018, but she was the adjutant before I was the adjutant, so we had a pretty decent relationship. And just one more historical note, there's a gentleman in our post, his name is Joseph Holt. Joseph Holt and his family were the first family in Raleigh to attempt to integrate the Raleigh school system. They didn't make it, but historically, that was a very big deal. He couldn't even go to the school in his neighborhood. He had to go to a school way across town. And a couple of months ago, that area in Oberlin Village, they dedicated a townhouse community to his family, and it's going to be called The Hope. So History makes things real. History is still happening with Post 157, and thank you all for having us here today.
Thank you so much, Commander Carr. What a great presentation. We appreciate it so much. And thank you all to the other members of the Post. We really appreciate you coming out today, and we learned so much. It is my distinct honor to bring up my colleague, Allison Thurman. She is the correspondence archivist in the Public Services Unit here in the State Archives. If you've come to do research, you've probably spoken to Allison for records. If you've emailed us to get records, if you're on our watching remotely, you've probably spoken with Allison that way too, to get records. Allison and I were colleagues in public services for years. We call each other the Dream Team, so I am so excited to bring Allison up to tell you about revolutionary ancestors. Allison.
Thank you, Josh. Good morning, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Okay, great. So I'm pleased to discuss records that document Revolutionary era information useful for genealogists and historians at the State Archives. We're going to look at documents that provide insight into the stories of people living in North Carolina during the Revolutionary era, including patriots and loyalists, for lack of better words. You may locate an ancestor in some of the records that we're going to talk about, but if not, you're also going to gain a closer look at this pivotal moment in North Carolina's history. The record groups that we're going to be discussing are going to be government records, including county and state agency records, military collection, and special collections. Based on my experience as a reference archivist in the search room, I can safely say with certainty that most of our researchers are interested in family history. These genealogists, they rely heavily on various records that are created and filed at the county government level. County records are not typically where you're going to find patriotic speeches or rousing narratives of battles, but they are important because they provide us with a record of the daily life of the ordinary citizen during this time. Beginning in 1775, there was a significant population increase in North Carolina. You have colonists that are moving from the northern colonies, especially at the beginning of the war when things were still relatively peaceful in the southern colonies. You're getting a lot of that immigration south. The population increase has been estimated at about 100,000 new residents. And with the westward expansion, the newcomers were soon many miles away from any seat of government, and so they began to petition the General Assembly for new courts closer to their homes. These are the series of records that we have for each county, including many of the defunct counties or counties that no longer exist. It really does depend on the date of county formation and the amount of records lost as to what records are available for each county and the date ranges that they cover. I'll point out CRX records. These are records that came to us from sources other than the county. So we do label them as county records, but we do not interfile them with records that came straight to us from the county creating agency. Court records, they contain a wide variety of wealthy information for genealogists and historians. What you see on the screen is just some of that information. The minutes are the most amount of materials that we have for court records. And they are arranged chronologically and they contain extraordinary details about the community. I feel there's really no better way to understand your time period of history than just by reading through the lower court minutes, the pleas and quarter session minutes, and then the superior court minutes. It's a fascinating look. But regarding court cases, several things that we like to remind researchers is that actual trial transcripts were almost never saved during this time period. Only occasionally do the minutes include testimony or detailed descriptions of case proceedings as we would think of them today. They just didn't keep that material. If the case was appealed to a higher court, for example, if it was appealed, they might have sent more information on with those records to the higher court, but most of the time you don't find a lot of that. And for the purposes of our topic of interest, I'd like to focus on Revolutionary era civil service and military service information in the court records. According to a law passed by the General Assembly in New Bern in 1777, an oath of allegiance was required by anyone appointed or elected to serve as a county official. This is a 1778 court docket from Wilkes County that records that Richard Allen was chosen as sheriff of Wilkes County and that he took the oath of allegiance to the state. We know from other records that Richard Allen served on and off in the American Army during the Revolutionary War. And when he was not serving in the military, when he was at home, he did serve as a civil servant. So you will find proof of his military service in other records that are not necessarily county, but here you have proof of civil service, his civil service during that time. Depending on the taking the oath of allegiance is as the only proof of being a patriot is tricky. One should take into consideration the practical purposes of taking the oath of allegiance, even if you were not necessarily in line with the American cause. If you were a merchant or a citizen who wanted to have any dealings with local government, you had to take an oath of allegiance to be able to file a will or a deed with the clerk, with the county. It was practical to take the oath of allegiance. There were also communities such as the Quaker community who did not believe in oath-taking. It was against their religion, so they would not take the oath of allegiance. You see that a lot. But what you can do is take note that if someone was willing to bind themselves to such large amounts of penalty money, then they were taking it seriously. The pleas of quarter session books and the Superior Court minutes include declarations of service by Revolutionary War veterans intending to apply for federal pensions. There were several federal pension laws. The most liberal of those was in 1832, and it extended pensions to more persons that were not covered by earlier laws in 1818 and 1828. But the 1832 Act provided that every officer or enlisted man who had served at least 2 years in the Continental Line or state troops, volunteer or militia, was eligible for a pension of full pay for life. Veterans who had served less than 2 years but more than 6 months were eligible for pensions of less than full pay. The Act also did not require applicants to demonstrate need, which was a big hurdle in the earlier acts because you had to demonstrate need. These particular records, they include genealogical and military service information. They're found in the court minutes, mainly from 1818 to 1845, even though a little bit before and after. But they're so detailed that sometimes they can provide more information than the actual surviving service record. This is a declaration of service for Solomon Witherington from Craven County. It's coming from the Craven County Superior Court minutes of 1832. It is 7 pages long and includes some great information, some of which is on the screen. His age, date of birth, that he was a substitute in the Army 3 times, and the names of those who he replaced. His recollections of actions he was involved in, the names of those he served with, and then the names of those who came to court with him to support his claims. And in this case, the court approved his declaration and it was certified. So at that point, it would then be included with his application to the federal government for a federal pension. The declarations have been abstracted in several NC genealogical publications. We have a great list or index of names compiled by a former volunteer, Betty Kamen, that is available in our military collection binding aid, which you can browse online, and then there's copies in our search room. But the indexes are a good place to start when you're researching the declarations. Certain county records were compiled into a miscellaneous category because they were of such specific nature or just so unique that it was difficult to decide what record series they should be in. But they run the gamut as to what kind of information may be found about a community and remind everyone, don't ever overlook them. If you're lucky, you may find genealogical information, but even if you don't, they are so diverse in nature that they can also be of historical significance as well. So there are many miscellaneous records from the Revolutionary War era in the county miscellaneous series. This is a list of Continental soldiers from Chowan County. This list was not created, if you look too carefully at it. It was not created during the Rev War. It was compiled on the back of a tax form from 1903. So it's kind of interesting to wonder what they were doing in the clerk's office in 1903, that they were compiling a list, but we take it as face value. It was sent to us directly by the county. So, but I mention it because it is an example of a record that you may not expect to find in a miscellaneous series, but it's really helpful because it provides the names of the soldiers in the 5th Regiment from Chowan County specifically. And this information may not be compiled to such a specific level in other military records. Within the county miscellaneous records as a group of records that we call slave records, the records contain petitions and papers concerning emancipation and manumission, among other. On the screen is a document from the Perquimans County slave records. It's a manumission petition for James, a former slave of Thomas Newby of Perquimans County. It's a very lengthy description of the merits of James during the Revolutionary War and why he should be granted his freedom. Unfortunately, it was not easy to obtain manumission, even if it were the wish of the slaveholder. We do know that Thomas Newby had in his mind already manumitted James, but in order for that process to, at the time, be finalized, the petition had to go before the General Assembly, and they had to approve it for it to become legal. But in the case of James, it's obvious that he was highly regarded in the local community due to the people that are signing off on this petition, and they felt that he deserved manumission. In the state archives, we house records from all 100 counties, but we also house records created by state agencies. These include our oldest agencies, our Secretary of State, our early governor's papers, colonial records, comptroller, session records. But we also do hold records from newer departments such as the DOT, DPI, DOA, Health and Human Services, among others. But not all state agency records are the best sources to search for Revolutionary era, obviously, information, but genealogical, military, or civil service. But there are some that can be helpful, and those are the ones that I'd like to look at closely. The Secretary of State holds the Revolutionary War military papers. These are land records that document the application process and then the final granting of land awarded to veterans of Continental Line service. At the State Archives, we refer to these military grants as the Tennessee land grants. This is because the land that was, this land when it was initially allocated was in North Carolina, but is now part of modern-day Tennessee. When the government allocated vacant land in the westernmost part of North Carolina, the frontier, as they might call it, and this land, when it was ceded to the, is now part of when Tennessee was formed in 1796. But they began issuing land grants in 1783 for military service. They were issued in lieu of cash payment, most of the time for military service. The original warrants and land grants are filed that were filed in the Secretary of State's office, and then over 100 years later, they were transferred over to the archives, where they are today, available for the public to come and view them. Tennessee land grants will specifically state Continental Line service as opposed to other land grants that were awarded during the Revolutionary era. They include the warrant number, the name and rank of the soldier, the amount of acreage, the date of issue, the name of the assignees. Warrants could be sold. If you're a veteran that's living in the eastern part of the state, you may not necessarily ever intend to pick up and move to, the frontier. So they could trade their land grants. They could also sell them. It would be indicated on the back of the grant, or the warrant of the assignee. The grant would ultimately be awarded to the final purchaser. And you can tell that the warrant on this screen is a bounty land warrant for Rev War service because it says John Wise, Corporal in the line of this state, 428 acres of land within the limits of the lands reserved by law for the officers and soldiers of the Continental Line. Again, these records are available for viewing in our search room. They have been microfilmed, and the originals have been retired due to preservation concerns, but they are arranged and labeled by the Tennessee county in which the land is located, and then by a file number that each has been assigned to each grant file. There's an index to the names of the soldiers and final assignees in our online catalog doc. I also want to mention that the land grants, including the Tennessee land grants, are available for searching on the website NC Land Grants, which is maintained by the Historical Records Online, NC Historical Records Online. This is a great resource. We archive staff use the site often, and we frequently refer patrons to the site, so you can do a variety of searching of the land grants from home. The State Archives has 1,422 folders of depositions and proofs submitted by soldiers and heirs in support of their bounty land claims. The General Assembly at that time would appoint a board of 3 commissioners that would oversee the bounty land process, and so they would be reviewing documents that were submitted for proof of service. So soldiers had to submit some kind of documentation as proof of service. Claimants who were filing on behalf of another person, like the veteran, had to furnish a power of attorney. If you're a guardian who's submitting documentation, you have to also submit proof of guardianship. So you'll also find discharge papers, affidavits, and Army commissions in these collection of papers. They may contain genealogical information as well as just military service. On this particular document, it is from 1820. John Wilson is appointing his son Noah to make application at the Secretary of State's office to obtain a military land grant, which he is legally entitled to for his services in the Continental Line. So this record tells us that not only did he serve in the military, but it also provides us with the name of his son Noah. So may not have found his son Noah anywhere else, but it tells us right here. We also have a Treasure and Comptrollers series that includes records that pertain to the Revolutionary War era. Some of these are on the screen. The Register of the North Carolina Continental Line is a roster that was created from pay and muster rolls in 1790. The state pensions to invalids and widows. The state did not have a comprehensive pension system for Revolutionary War veterans as they would later for Civil War veterans, for example. But the General Assembly in 1784 did pass a pension law for disabled militiamen who were not eligible for federal pensions. Widows and orphans could also apply for these pensions. Again, they were only for militia service, not for Continental Line service. Not many of them were granted, but what do survive, we do have them in our archives. There's an index to them in the Military Collection Guide, which is on our website. The most useful, however, of records in the Treasure and Comptroller papers are the pay vouchers and Army account books. They are fiscal in nature, but they do provide us with a lot of military and civil service information. Before looking at the pay vouchers, talk a little very quickly about how they were issued. Districts were created, established to handle the new voucher system where counties would be grouped together geographically into districts which were usually named for a military district or the Superior Court, District Court. The districts consisted of a board of auditors to hear public claims for service, fixed prices for goods and services, and then they would issue the vouchers and record the payments in running account books. Knowing what district the voucher was issued from can help you determine if a voucher you have found is for the right person. That can be a problem with common names. Think about the fact that you might have someone with a very common name and you're not sure exactly if you find a voucher which person it's for. If you know the district that they were living in, that can help you narrow it down. In place of cash, agents issued vouchers as written promises that a person would be paid a specified sum in the future, usually first for military service, but vouchers could also be issued for goods purchased for the war effort or for other services such as civil service. So think of hogs, crops, military service, or helping to build a bridge might get you issued a pay voucher. This particular voucher is from the District of Wilmington, dated 1785, and it's certifying that John Dull was allowed the sum of £9 for his service in the militia. It also includes the names of the auditors. Again, we do advise researchers to pay attention to the fiscal districts and the name of the auditors on the vouchers because, again, you may find a voucher that's for John Smith, but you know that the John Smith that you're looking for lived in Wilmington from other documentation. But the voucher that you found is for John Smith who lived in, say, Halifax district. That's probably not the same person. There are over 40,000 legible vouchers that survive. The originals are retired, again, due to preservation concerns, but they are on microfilm, alphabetically by surname, but they're also available for online searching on the website Family Search. They do have a few complications. When they were redeemed, they were hole punched. This was a way to protect against fraud. Someone trying to redeem a voucher more than once. This was one way. Some have so what you can see is that some of the information is lost when that took place. Some vouchers have rejected written on them, but they don't provide a reason why. Those issued for Continental Line service don't usually give the regiment or the district. They don't provide any genealogical information except maybe where they were living, but not really genealogical or any vital information, statistics information. The issuance and redemption of pay vouchers were recorded in volumes known as Revolutionary Army account books. The account books are not as easy to decipher as vouchers, and they are not as informative, but an entry in the account book may be the only record of payment if a voucher does not survive. There are 4 series of books. Most series are fiscal in nature, recording military payments, Tennessee land grant certificates, payments for goods, purchases, expense claims for the military, and that sort of thing. But they do also include miscellaneous information about fraud investigations, particularly the Warrington pay frauds in 1786 and 87, where Army commissioners cashed in over 1,000 fraudulent pay vouchers for their own profit. So there's a lot of investigation going on in those particular volumes. And they have payments made for service in the Chickamauga expeditions, and then they also provide proof of service for North Carolinians that were at Morris Creek battle in 1776. So a lot of different information in those volumes. The best way to locate an ancestor in a book is to use the indexes that are available to locate the appropriate book and page number. The Army accounts are indexed to a name level in our online catalog doc, and there are printed indexes in the search room. Once you have the book and the page number where your person of interest is recorded, you must then work backwards in the book until you find the title and the column headings which describe the contents of that particular account book. Keep a lookout for the fiscal district again and for the name of the auditor. This example is very typical of entry from Volume A. It's concerning sundries furnished the militia from 1781. So it provides the names of those that are being paid and a running account of the payments being made. They do also have some complications. There are 4 series that contain different information, as we talked about. There is the publication North Carolina Research by Helen Leary. If you're not familiar with that volume and you do a lot of research at the state archives, I encourage you to seek that publication out. It gives excellent descriptions of the information in each of the account volumes. The Secretary of State finding aid available on our website also provides descriptions of the different books. So I highly recommend that you consult these publications when you're researching the account books. The first series is hard to navigate because of different page numbers and different folio numbers. The books that we have today are now a compilation of many other different books that were compiled together at some point. And as a result of that, you may have like 3 different page numbers on one page. You're not exactly sure what page number you're on. Some of the pages are divided into sections called folios, so you have to keep up with what folio number you're trying to search for on that page. So that can be a little confusing. And it can also be disappointing when the payment doesn't specify what they're being paid for, which is often the case in these books. Other Revolutionary Era government records, the General Assembly petitions, always something to keep in mind. There are hundreds of different petitions in each session during that time. The Delamar transcripts, it's a typed abstract of these petitions that are located in the session records from 1778 to 1833. This is a really helpful source because the petitions are not indexed within the General Assembly session records, so these abstracts will give you the session year of the petition, so then that way you know what session to go to search for that, because they're not indexed. District Superior Court records, you're going to hear a lot of the cases that were passed on up from the lower courts in these cases, so a lot of information about what's going on in the county during the Revolution. The governor's papers, we do have 4 governors that served from 1776 to 1785. We have their official correspondence, which includes military business, orders to and from the Army, the correspondence going back and forth to the Continental Congress, military and political matters, but there are also a lot of correspondence from just the people back home on a wide variety of issues from the home front. The British records collection includes copies of records that were pertaining to colonial North Carolina. The originals are in what is now the National Archives in London. At one point, an effort was made to make copies from these originals. The State Archives now has copies of those. They include a lot of general correspondence from this time period from British officials back and forth to the British military here, American allies, and then there's a lot of correspondence about loyalists in there. Within our military collection, we have the War of the Revolution collection, which is 14 firework dex boxes. Some of the contents in the collection are on the screen. As you can see, there's a wide variety here about the Revolution as it was taking place in North Carolina. There's a finding aid in our online catalog doc, and then there's binders in the search room, which describe the contents of the collection for easier search. The finding aid also includes a cross-reference to loyalist records that are in other record groups, just as a little handy there. Most of these records have been digitized, and they're part of the Revolutionary War era collection that's available on our digital collections website. Within the military collection, the troop returns are some of the most helpful Revolutionary War records, especially for proof of military service. The troop returns include information on both Continental Line and the militia. There are 8 boxes that cover 1747 to 1893, but the majority of them are from 1763 to 1794. They include returns from the Continental Line. These are going to give you the names of the officers and the number of members of the company, but not necessarily the names of the members of the company. Militia returns or muster rolls, however, do usually give you the names of the members of the company, not just the officers, but the names of the privates. This is a muster roll of Colonel William Davidson's company, who was in Wilmington at the time, 1779. So it does provide, again, the names of the commission dates for the officers and the appointment dates, terms of service and general remarks. But as with most muster rolls, it does provide the names of the privates. There's a finding aid on our website and then one in our search room that describes the contents of these boxes to a folder level. They also have been digitized and they're available for viewing on our digital collections website. This is just a closer look at a militia muster roll. Again, they include the name of the officers and also the company members. The muster rolls are usually named, or the titles are usually for the company captain, so that's how you can keep track of them. They're very helpful when researching the militia. There's not that many surviving militia records that pertain to this time period that provides the soldiers' names and places them in a specific county within a specific year. It's a closer look at, the muster rolls. This is a closer look at a field return. These usually pertain to Continental Line, the names of the officers and the number of soldiers, but not their names usually. This is an extremely specific field return from 1775. It includes the number of the drummers, the fifers, the firelocks, and the swords. Not all field returns are this descriptive. I guess it matters on how much time was available to actually fill out a report or how descriptive the note taker was. But this particular one, it gives you a really good picture of what life was like while they were in camp after active duty. We have an extensive group of mostly non-government records that make up our special collections. You see on the screen here a lot of what the special collections hold. We are actively seeking collections that illuminate the history and culture of North Carolina. There are private collections of personal papers of more prominent North Carolinians during the Revolutionary War. Our Richard Caswell, our governor, William Polk, James Iredell are just a few of some of the more prominent North Carolina private collections that we have. But there are also other private collections, obviously, that include more information about just more of our ordinary citizens, and then Native Americans, Loyalists, African Americans, and just topics that were important to them during that time. And we should not overlook the fact that there was a strong Loyalist movement in North Carolina. There were many who opposed the war for a variety of reasons. These could include economics or political reasons, but some reasons were just more personal. A good example is many of the Scottish Highlanders who had immigrated from to the Cumberland County area after the Battle of Culloden in 1746, for example. They had to take an oath of allegiance to the king after Culloden. And when they came to that area, and now it was time to start taking a new oath of allegiance to North Carolina, they were kind of hesitant to do that. They didn't really want to break the oath that they had given. If you're researching Loyalists as a group, or you're researching an ancestor, there's materials in all of the county, state, governor's military collections, but you're going to find a lot of information about Loyalists in different record categories. This is a list of Tories from 1782 from Burke County, and includes the names of those accused of being Tories and the names of the witnesses against them. Many Loyalist records pertain to land confiscation, which was a really common problem for those who were considered Loyalists. The history of land confiscation in North Carolina from 1777 to 1783 is hugely complicated and in very nuanced, so we don't really have time to go into a lot of that. That's worthy of its whole workshop. But a simple explanation is that during this time, by law, those who were refusing to work with local government, were suspected of having loyalist leanings, or would not take the oath of allegiance could have had their land or their goods confiscated. One prominent example of this was Henry Eustace McCullough. He was a large landowner in mainly Rowan, Anson, and Guilford County, and a known loyalist. In 1782, the General Assembly passed a confiscation act specifically singling Henry McCullough out as someone whose property was forfeited and could be sold by the county commissioners. There are many Rowan County deeds, if you start going through them, that include the wording of this particular act that was justifying the sale of McCullough's confiscated land, literally because of a law that they passed naming him. If you find an ancestor who purchased confiscated land, it can provide you with an interesting history of the community. Really quickly, this is one of my favorite Loyalist records. It's a trial for treason, State versus Jethro Oates from 1780 in Craven County. He was traveling to Patrick Stewart's, whom he had heard was loyal to the British king. He was met by Continental soldiers on the way, who he believed to be British, and he told them he was a friend to the English. And the Continentals heard enough of this, and they arrested him and took him to Newbern to be tried for treason. I would love to know what happened, the outcome of that trial, but I do know that it was definitely an unlucky day for him to be a friend to the English. Very quickly, we wanted to mention our digital collections website. We have a very active digital collections unit that continuously scans original records to add to our digital collection. So be sure to keep your eye out for new additions. We don't want to duplicate anything that is already online, so we do also keep that in mind when we're digitizing collections. The Revolutionary War era troop returns, federal and state constitutional materials, the early governor's papers, and colonial court records have all been digitized. And on the screen, you'll see some contact information about visiting our office. You can visit our website, which is on the slide here, for more information about visiting the search room, our operational hours, policies and regulations, and best practices. So I'd like to close by thanking you for your attention and your interest in records pertaining to the Revolutionary Era at the State Archives. My contact information is on the screen, so please contact me or any of our other excellent reference staff with any questions you may have in the future. And I also would love to work with you in person in the search room if you're able to come in. We would, if you have that opportunity, we would love to see you there. Thanks.
Thank you, Allison, so much. It is now time for our break. So please go back out to the hallway and get refreshed. We're running a little long, so we're supposed to start the next presentation at 11. That's just 2 minutes. That's not enough time for break. So come back here. The break was supposed to be 15 minutes, so we'll do 15 minutes. 11:15, we'll start our next presentation. Thank you all. if the folks outside would start making their way in, it is time to resume our program. Folks online, we're getting folks back in here in just a minute to start back up. Thank you for your patience. I don't actually know. Welcome back from our break. I am honored to introduce my other colleague who's going to join us today, Ashley Lotta Post. She is the Military Collections Archivist. A little bit of background on the archives. When you come to the archives and when you email us, you work with the public services staff, but there are a lot of archivists that you might not see directly that are doing all the work behind the scenes to get records ready for you. And that's my job. I head the government records description unit for public records. Ashley does the exact same thing for our special collections on the military side. She works with people to get collections here, which is what she will talk about in her second presentation. And she also arranges and describes all the military records. So really, it's her unit and my unit are the ones that get things ready so that when you come to the search room, you can have access to the history that we've heard about all day today. So we'd like to shine a light onto those staff and onto her records. Ashley's going to tell us first about specifically the Elmer Gibson collection, and then she's going to tell us more generally how veterans can add their history and their stories to our collections here at the State Archives. Ashley, the floor is yours. Please join me in welcoming Ashley. Thank you.
All right, good morning. Can y'all hear me? All right. All right, so like Josh said, I'm going to talk a little bit about one of the specific collections that is in the military collection, and it's one of my personal favorites. We're probably not supposed to have favorites, but I do. And it is the Elmer Gibson papers. It's a really fascinating story of an actually very influential individual who I don't think has received the recognition that he deserves. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about him and then a little bit about the military collection in general. All right. So Elmer Gibson, a little bit of background on him. He was born in 1903 in Greensboro. His father was a minister in Greensboro and High Point. He was actually the minister at the first black church in High Point, which is High Point United Methodist Church. And then Elmer followed him basically into the ministry. He was very influenced by his father, or by both of his parents, but especially his father. So Elmer was licensed to preach at the age of 16 and preached for a long time in Greensboro before moving to Pennsylvania and then Delaware. So Elmer was in Delaware right right about the time World War II was getting ready to start. And he felt the call to service like a lot of individuals did. So in February of 1941, he was commissioned as first lieutenant in the Army's Chaplain Corps. He served kind of an interesting role during World War II. Because Elmer Gibson was 37 at the time, which was older than the age that was allowed for an appointment to the regular Army, he was not appointed as a regular Army officer. So he served in a kind of quasi-reserve role as Army chaplain. So he was on active service without having the full benefits of that service for his rank. Right. All right, so Gibson served in the segregated 367th Infantry Regiment. They did training at Camp Claiborne, Louisiana, from 1941 to June of 1942. He was a regimental chaplain, so he served on a mixed-race regimental staff of officers, but he ministered exclusively to troops of color. Right, so he immediately went in and tried to improve the conditions for his troops, for the Black troops that were stationed there. He was really kind of taken by surprise at the, I guess, lack of inclusion in the military. He was not obviously surprised by it in general, like in society, but even in the military, I think it surprised him a little bit. But in February of 1942, one of the things that he helped to accomplish was the Army dedicated a chapel at Camp Claiborne for the African American soldiers who did not have a dedicated place of worship there prior to that time. Another really influential individual in Gibson's life he met at Camp Claiborne is Brigadier General Benjamin Davis Sr., and that is the individual. That individual right there. Davis was an assistant in the office of the U.S. Army Inspector General, and he was one of the highest ranking Black officers in the U.S. Armed Forces at the time. He also served on the Advisory Committee on Negro Troop Policies, so he was going around essentially conducting inspection tours of African American soldiers in the Army, and that was the capacity that he and Gibson met in at first until their relationship, basically, they went from professional to friends. Gibson consulted with him a lot on issues of race relations, and he really leaned on him in a lot of ways. Right. So after Camp Claiborne, Gibson and he got moved to the 364th Infantry, moved to Camp Papago Park, which is outside of Tempe, Arizona. The Camp Papago Park is an interesting, sort of infamous location. It has a prisoner of war camp there, and the local citizens really resented the presence of Black troops. There are several recorded issues of racial violence, not in the Elmer Gibson papers, but in other locations. That is also the case at his next station of duty, which was Camp Van Dorn in Mississippi. It seems that Gibson did not really want this period of his life documented as much. He did not save as much photographs or correspondence during this period of his service as he did prior and post. So that's kind of interesting. All right. And then in January of 1944, the 364th Infantry Regiment moves to the Aleutian Islands, which is in Alaska. Basically, the U.S. Army was constructing bases and airfields in the western part of the islands to protect against the Japanese military. They had already taken, I think, 2 of the Aleutian Islands at the time, so that was part of what the U.S. Army was doing there. It was also part of the plan to use the islands to support the launch of an eventual invasion of Japan. So it was a really interesting post for Gibson. There we go. But Gibson, again, kind of kept doing what he felt called to do, which was providing for his troops, or ministering to his troops, really attending to the spiritual needs of the people that he was there to serve. So he would preach in these hut chapels, kind of throughout the islands. And here he was actually able to lead biracial chapel service or integrated chapel services, which he had not been able to do previously. So this was clearly, and we have more records of his time here, it was clearly a period that he looked on more fondly. So yeah, he was stationed here until the war ended. He left in October of 1945. He does leave the Army after this. He briefly retires from the Army. I think he was a bit disillusioned. Some of the experience that he and his troops had faced really disappointed him. He does, however, return. There we go. He does, however, return in 1947 when Harry Truman appoints him to the regular Army with the permanent rank of major. He had previously been denied the promotion to major before he had retired. Then he gets the promotion when he comes back. So this made him one of the highest ranking African Americans in the Army in the 1940s. All right, and he uses this time from 1947 to about 1951 to basically better conditions for soldiers of color, service members of color, right? So he continues to write, he goes out and speaks and testifies, he answers questionnaires on what integration would look like in the armed services. This is one of the publications that the military put out specifically about what integration could look like, and it might be difficult, but you can see his notes, and throughout this, I should have included more pictures, but you can see throughout, he includes a lot of his personal notes or thoughts on what it should look like, what they were planning, and how he kind of disagreed. So it was fascinating to see. This is another one of their questionnaires that they sent out, and we have his answers to these questions. So this is a pretty common thing that he did during this 4-year period. Right. So mid-1948, President Truman signs 2 executive orders, 9980 and 9981, which desegregated the federal government, including the military, and established the President's Committee on Equality of Treatment and Opportunity in the Armed Services, which is a mouthful. It's more commonly known as the Fahey Committee, after its chairman. And their job was to ensure that all 5 branches of the armed services complied with the new desegregation policies that they were coming up with. And Gibson actually testified before the Fahey Committee in Congress. And that was actually on the recommendation of former First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt. So Elmer Gibson saw the integration of training units from 1948 to 1951 while he was stationed at Fort Dix in New Jersey. And he did this for basically, again, in his chaplaincy work, until he was called into the Korean War in 1951. He was called overseas. There we go. Yeah, so he was ordered for overseas service in the Korean War, arrived in Korea May 8th of 1952, and was assigned to serve as the Assistant Corps Chaplain of the U.S. Army 10th Corps. And this actually made him the first Black Assistant Army Chaplain in American history. So he was in Korea for 18 months, and he did a lot of different things while he was there. He ministered to injured soldiers, worked a lot in portable field hospitals. He talked to, prayed for injured soldiers, literally on runways, like while they were getting ready to be evacuated. He kind of ministered to individuals in Korea, like to the Korean people. He also held chapel services, or integrated chapel services while he was there. Right, and throughout the Korean War, segregated units were slowly being integrated by transferring troops between units. So by the end of 1954, the last all-Black Army unit was disbanded, and the more than 500,000 Black service members were fully integrated into the U.S. Armed Forces. Gibson leaves Korea in 1953. He received 2 Bronze Star medals for meritorious service. And then when he returns to the United States, he is stationed at Fort Lewis in Washington, and he remains there until retiring in January of 1957 with the rank of lieutenant colonel. That's just a bit about him. He's so fascinating. But yeah, that's it. They were brought to us by his son. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So I'm going to talk very briefly about donating, how you or somebody you know could donate veteran stories to the archives. I'm going to keep it very brief so that we do have time for questions. So yeah. So like Josh mentioned, I am the military collections archivist, so I'm the one that typically does the arranging and describing of military materials. The sort of mission of the military collection is to document and preserve basically records dealing with the state's military history, right? And we have things going from before the Revolutionary War all the way up until present day. And that can look like a lot of different things, take many different forms. So I'm going to show you a couple of examples of what it could look like, things you may have seen and not thought anything of, maybe not thought they were necessarily worth preserving, but we definitely think that they are. Right. So kind of I think our largest category are personal papers. So things like letters and correspondence are really important. We have a lot of correspondence can be, letters, postcards, V-mail from World War II. We have a lot of really cool examples of those. Service records, so DD 214s, those can be really valuable because they kind of give a brief overview of somebody's military service, but other military paperwork can also be valuable, so things like orders, official correspondence, things like medical records and pay stubs we even have. All kinds of things fit into that category. We also have and continue to collect personal memories and reminiscences. So these are like written accounts of somebody's memories of their time during service. Photographs and other images kind of depicting life during military service. Again, this is a pretty broad category. So we have, training exercises, sort of, I think this is officer training at Fort Benning, and then just an individual at Pope Airfield. So this can include a wide variety of things. Same is true of moving images. I didn't have a great image for this, but this can be analog or so like videotapes or film, or it can be born digital footage, but it's the same category or the same criteria for photos and negatives. Posters, saw some great examples of those out in the lobby. We have fabulous examples, especially from our World War I and II collection. So we really want to kind of continue moving that forward in time. So things like Korean War, Vietnam War era, we're trying to fill out that collection. But things like recruitment posters and propaganda posters, veterans advocacy, and we typically prefer things that have a North Carolina tie. So state and local level posters are really important. So like that one on the left is for the 82nd Airborne specifically. Right. Maps, architectural drawings, engineering drawings, so any type of schematics of military vehicles or military installations, those are pretty rare. But we have, okay, I was like, that's not me, right? So we have here a map from a Civil Air Patrol flight or a training mission, and then an airborne troop carrier map, which is used for drilling purposes. So a lot of things can fit into that. And everybody's favorite kind of miscellaneous category. So training manuals, which can, again, look like a lot of things. Civilian materials, so things like Red Cross organizations, Civilian Defense League, or rationing materials like from World War II. It's not technically military, but it happens during the war, so we consider it a military item. And then very few published materials. It's a very, very specific case, usually due to like copyright issues, but it's usually like military publications specifically. So we have the Civil Air Patrol, the CAP flyer. That is something that is produced by the military, so that's why we would accept it. This is by no means an exhaustive list, but just something to get the wheels turning. And I definitely want to mention our Veterans Oral History Project. So the mission of this project is to preserve and provide access to the memories and experiences of service members who have a tie to North Carolina, right? So this project started in the 1990s, and we have about 1,200 interviews so far. So basically, we record interviews of veterans sharing their experiences, their military experiences, and then we preserve them here and provide access like we do with any other record. We have, I think, from a handful of World War I veterans, actually, but I think our bulk is World War II to kind of present day. And the criteria for that, any service member from North Carolina or who lived in North Carolina for a significant portion of their life or who was stationed here for an extended period of time is eligible for the Veterans Oral History Project. And you do not need to have served in combat. That is a criteria for other repositories, but not for ours. Okay. All right. Super, super quickly, I want to talk about a couple other places where, other units where military materials might fall if they are not necessarily specific for the military collection. So let's say you have some military and some other things. It might be a better fit for like private collections or private manuscripts. So a really good example of that is actually the Millie Dunn-Vesey papers, who was mentioned earlier. So she was in World War II, but then she also went on to have a great civil rights advocacy career. So because she did two things, her papers fit within private collections. The organization records is kind of similar. So this is actually where the American Legion papers are. So it is a veterans organization, but because it is an organization, they have their own set of papers, their own collection. We have other oral history projects in which military service might be mentioned, but it might not necessarily be the focus. So other projects can include school integration, an American Indian Heritage Commission projects. I think there's a couple other ones that are ongoing. So, yeah. Audiovisual materials, very similar to private collections, just with audiovisual materials like photographs, moving images, things like that. And then we have two regional branches that I wanted to highlight. Our Outer Banks History Center in Manio, which deals with kind of coastal history, and then the Western Regional Archives, which deals with Western North Carolina. They're in Asheville. So yeah, if they're more regionally specific, those two locations might be more appropriate. Yeah. Other than that, and I apologize, I don't have my contact information, but please feel free to reach out if you or anybody you know feels compelled to donate. We are always looking to help people preserve their stories. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. And he's going to get the other one up there to y'all. So I will come to you with a microphone as you have questions. But I do have one question already from the chat. Someone was chomping at the bit. Ashley, you've inspired a question in the chat. Barbara asks, I have some stories of NC ancestors who served in the military. Do you only collect oral stories from living people, or do you also do oral histories to document ancestors' experiences?
We have not, to my knowledge, documented ancestors' experiences through oral interviews. I don't know our policy on that, actually.
I think you get to make it.
Send me an email, Barbara.
So Barbara's Ashley's contact is on the website.
Yes.
Yes, under special collections. So send her an email and we can figure out how we can best document your ancestor stories. And you might even have records that she might add to the collection you don't even realize are historically valuable. So thank you for the question. Do we have any in the room?
Okay, if you wanted to research a specific civil, or rather Revolutionary War ancestor, where would you start? What would be the portal or the link that you would start your search?
So just in case anyone didn't hear, where is the very first place to start? If you're coming in cold, so I'm assuming this is for Allison, if you're coming in cold, don't know much about your ancestors, where's the first place what do you do as your first step?
That is very dependent upon what your information you're trying to find out about your ancestor, and what kind of resources or materials are going to be the best to get started with. I think if you come in knowing, if they served in the military, and more about that, then if you're looking for records that are actually housed by the archives, then our finding aids are a good place to start, kind of get an idea of what kind of collections that we have and what information is in each collection. if you come in and you're not quite as sure about, whether or not they were actually serving in the military or what kind of military records would be the most helpful, because, there's records for, like service records, like, for example, that are really helpful that may be online, but they're not necessarily here. We can point you to records that, are perhaps in other institutions or that are online that can help you with that. But if you're just wanting to search records at the archives, then you can always, if you truly do not have any information about, just need somewhere to begin, then the library has a lot of excellent resources and indexes and records abstracts to help you get started with that. But then when you come up to the search room, that's where we have the original records and the original collections. Finding aids are available, and then also our staff can always point you to collections that, based upon like an interview with you, really, collections that are going to be where you should start.
Thank you, Allison. Other questions from the room? All right. David McCorkle, everybody.
Just curious on the post, do you know why they abandoned that house or why they left it? Any idea?
I'll pass the mic over to David.
Researcher extraordinaire, David Serkster.
So I'm not going to pull any punches with this because I'm not going to. The city of Raleigh basically said, we're going to give you money for this land or we're going to take it. They basically took 414, 416, they took land along Bloodworth Street and took the 2 lots in Cabarrus, and that was it. It was Hobson's choice. You take the money we're offering you, or you take the money we're offering you. We're taking the land. It doesn't matter. It is just, and I'm going to leave it at that.
1994.
So mine's more of an observation than a question. Do you know whether the drum group, the drum corps, participated in Emancipation Day ceremonies in early January, early on? Did you see any of that in the research that you were doing, David?
Yeah, they talk about several of the grades being integrated, and there is an article. There's an article early on about, and this is in the News and Observer. The Carolinian, for some very odd reason, does not have a whole lot of information on the post. The News and Observer does mention that early Armistice Day celebrations are going to be integrated. And that is the term actually that they use, is integrated. And so yes, and it's fascinating because Raleigh Post number 1, it's $3,000 for the uniforms and all the equipment for their drum and bugle corps. And it's raised within a month. Charles G. Norwood 157, it's $2,000 for that they have to raise. It takes a very, very long time to get that money raised. And your files have an excellent, in 1929, the struggle to get, the struggle to get a colored drum and bugle corps to the National Convention because it was in a segregated city, and there's a ton of correspondence about what they're going to do, how they're going to handle it. So it's there.
The reason why I ask is because I've done some research on the Emancipation Day ceremonies, especially here in Raleigh, and I recognize that picture that you had, but I didn't know what it was linked to. So that kind of answers my question. So thank you for putting those pieces together for me. That's really helpful.
So this is related to the military collection. If you have some family papers or something that are related that you don't want to surrender, would you digitize them, or would you need to put them in the collection?
So we cannot digitize anything that is not in our holdings.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we're happy to provide advice on how you could do it yourself.
Yes.
I know you do, but for the people who don't. Okay.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Williams, and for all three presenters, the information was wonderful. I love the State Archives myself. I think that history does make things real, and I know in my work that I do in trying to educate people, the thread a lot of times is the military service. I mean, we are complicated, our history is very sensitive, my heart is pounding right now just because of the subject matter, but it's important, I think, to sit in that space and to share this information with others, not only history lovers, but other people, because the contributions of everybody needs to be highlighted and lifted up. And a lot of us are sitting here today with privilege because of the willingness of our ancestors or people in the past to contribute to this country. And I think that's important. I wanted to ask each of you, what drew you to this place, to this passion that you have, whether it's in your job or it's in your service?
For me, I was still serving in the North Carolina National Guard, and one of my buddies retired, and he joined this post. So he was on this recruiting frenzy. So I went to a meeting one weekend, and I was just like, oh, yeah, that's cool, those older folks. However, those older folks needed younger me. So I just got pulled in, and they needed my census, my administrative, my organization skills. And here I am 14 years later. I'm still learning about our organization, the American Legion, but I always joke, if I'm not working, the American Legion in church takes up most of my time. So, but yeah, I got here because of a friend, and I just love still learning about, the American Legion and veterans, and this was something very monumental, in our learning and our post history. So I'm glad to have been here today.
Well, I don't want to be one of those people who say, I just love history and I grew up with it and I always wanted to learn more about history, but that might be it. I had a family that exposed me to a lot of different history growing up, and I just cultivated that love over time. Decided that I wanted to share that, history and become more educated in public history, so that I could enter into a career where I could share that knowledge and that love and passion with others. And I find it hard to kind of narrow down what kind of history I love the most, but I do enjoy military history very much. And that has been something, my interest here today obviously is something that, I am kind of drawn to military history, but this was a great, wonderful program, so I was really happy to be here today to share it with everyone.
I kind of stumbled into archiving specifically. I have a degree in public history, but this is a really cool way to get paid to continue to learn, but also to get to share that knowledge with other people. That's why my degree is in public history, because as much as I love learning about history, I want other people to share that passion. So that's always been something that has been important. But military history specifically, my background is in political and military history. And I think because it is so intersectional, it does affect so many people's lives in ways that they don't necessarily understand, or they don't see until we bring it to them. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I'll answer it too since I work here. I knew I wanted to do history early on. I found archives when I was in undergrad, and my first undergrad class, I was assigned a seminar where we had to do a lot of research in the special collections, and I just fell in love with the environment and with doing archival work and archival research. And I got a job at the university library, the archives. They treated me more like an intern because they knew I was interested in the field, and I just loved it ever since. I think it's really important what we do. I'm immediate past president of the Society of North Carolina Archivists. So we, as archivists, really feel strongly about what we do, that we are making history accessible, we're preserving it, and like Ashley said, we are educating people about it to get folks interested in it, because what we're presenting here is authentic, it's real, as George said, and it's necessary to give people the kind of context that they need to understand our lives now. If you don't have that, you don't know what's going on today. And we're information workers, but we're preserving information, and that's what we do. And it is a privilege to work here and to do this work. It is also a really serious obligation on our parts, because we know we're the stewards of history. And whether you're in Ashley's position and you're the steward of the private materials that someone has given to us to take care of forever, that's a big obligation. With my position, I'm the steward of public records that belong to everybody in North Carolina, and the trust of the citizens is in my unit to make sure that those records are preserved and made accessible. And in Allison's unit, everybody who needs a record has to go through public services. Those are huge obligations, but we take them seriously, and we really appreciate all the people of the Friends of the Archives who can help enable our work and let us do what we can do to keep this important work going. Thank you.
And Josh, thank you for bringing this up as a possibility for presentation. I think all the presenters, your presentations were wonderful. Thank you very much. And but I really, I think about the American Legion post, and the little snippet that you had today, this history, you can maybe embellish it a little bit, but then I can imagine that ending with a scene from the movie Bright Leaf. Have you ever seen that? You need to find that. I can just imagine that music playing in the background. So.
Well, thank you. I'll look for it.
Bright Leaf tobacco makes me, fun fact, because we do archives fun facts all the time. Original motion pictures were on a nitrate medium, and tobacco makes me think about nitrate, because in the right conditions, they get smoky and so nitrate film is considered incredibly dangerous, but directors for a long time were really hesitant to change over to new film because they didn't like the picture quality of the polyester film or safety film. So when we find older motion picture film, we have to make sure, is it nitrate or is it not? Because we have to treat it differently when it's donated.
We do, and we have, I don't know, I used to work with our microfilm collection a lot, and that was another one of the things that we had kept in mind is, some of that old microfilm was nitrate. So, yeah.
Nothing in the search room.
Nothing in the search room, but it just, the fun little things that come up.
Yeah. If you want to learn about strange esoterica, about paper, up to strange things with digital preservation, just ask any of us and we can probably rattle on for a while about it. But if there are no more questions, I'll make sure there's no more questions in the YouTube chat. There aren't any, so please join me once again in thanking our wonderful speakers today. Thank you all for coming to see us. If you've joined us online, if you're not a friend, please go to the Friends website and enroll in the Friends of the Archives. And if you're here, please make sure you sign up for our list on the way out. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye, everybody.